Welcome to A Dog's Devotion, the podcast for anyone who knows that life is better with a dog. Here we celebrate the unshakable bond between humans and their four-legged best friends. From heartwarming rescue stories to fascinating insights into canine behavior, well, we cover it all. Whether you're here to learn more about your dog, hear stories that touch your heart, or simply celebrate the joy dogs bring into our lives, this is your place. Because when it comes to love, loyalty, and laughter, no one does it better than our dogs. So on today's show, we learn about how dogs feel. What does it mean when they wag their tail or get aggressive about food? Today, we're going to learn more about dog behavior and how we can actually deepen our connection with dogs. So I'm thrilled to welcome Holly Molinaro, an animal welfare scientist whose work with the Canine Science Collaboratory is both groundbreaking and heartwarming. Her research focuses on something that's at the very core of this podcast, the positive emotional states of dogs and how we as humans interpret their happiness. Holly's work isn't just about science, it's about deepening our connection with our dogs, learning to see and honor the emotions they experience every day. I can't wait to explore how understanding a dog's joy can change the way we live with them, love, and care for them. Holly, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, first of all, can you explain to all of us what exactly is it that you do?
Yes. So I like to say I'm an animal welfare scientist.
Yeah.
I recently graduated with my PhD in animal behavior. So I basically study all animals in human care. So whether that's in zoos, I've done work in zoos, or our pets at home. And I just try to figure out ways that we can better their lives.
Okay, so let's take a look at dogs, for example. Like, do you have dogs that come into the university that you work in and you study them there, or do you study them at their...
Yeah, so all of my work we didn't have any dogs in the lab per se. So we would either have one of my experiments, we had people bring in their pet dogs into our lab space. But majority of my work was actually just filming my own dad and my own dog and making videos of that and sending it out to people, sending out a survey to people and asking people what they think the dog might be feeling.
Really? So give me an example, like something that your dog was doing with your dad that people would comment on.
Yeah. So,
I
excuse
see
my
you have
cat.
cats.
Yes, I don't have a dog, but I have a cat, which is funny. I like to say dogs are for work and cats are for home. That was kind of my
Right.
joke during my PhD. Yeah. So that study with my dad and dog involved my dad and dog just doing things that like they normally would do that you might assume would be positive or negative. So like seeing a treat, most people would assume that's positive. Seeing a vacuum or seeing a cat, most people might assume that's negative for the dog. So I just filmed them doing general things that people do or see with their dog every day.
Really? Okay, so what inspired you to pursue a career in animal welfare science and specifically focus on canine emotional well-being?
Yeah, so it kind of all started back when I was 3 years old, and I started watching Animal Planet and Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter
Oh, the
specifically.
crocodile man.
Yes, yes. I knew I wanted to work with animals at a very young age. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work with animals. And then in my undergrad, I studied rattlesnakes. And while that was so much fun, and I really enjoyed studying rattlesnakes, I did not like going out into the field. There was like too many bugs and spiders. I respect bugs and spiders, but I didn't like being around them.
Okay.
And so then I
But you
figured,
would study rattlesnakes.
yeah, but I love rattlesnakes. Yeah.
So strange. Okay.
Yeah. And then I figured out you can study animals in zoos.
Uh-huh.
So I did my master's at Sonoma State in California studying baboons at the Oakland Zoo.
Right.
And I loved that. And I loved the idea that my science and research can directly impact an animal's life. Like what I found from my master's research directly went to the zoo and they were able to better the lives of the baboons. And so I really liked that like kind of niche that I was doing. And then I saw a tweet for a fully funded PhD position studying dogs. And I was like, that would be so perfect to like continue this work of how can we better understand animals' lives in order to make them better, and what better animal to do that with than with a dog.
Interesting. So in your research, how do you define a positive emotional state in dogs? And what does that look like in everyday life?
Yeah, so this is such a big, interesting question. The short answer is we don't really know because the long answer is so humans love to prescribe our own emotions onto dogs, something called anthropomorphism. So, like, we see happiness because we know what happiness is like. But the truth is that dogs have evolved so differently than us. So while we know that they can have positive and negative emotional experiences, we don't really know exactly what dog happiness, quote unquote, looks like versus dog sadness, quote unquote, looks like because we're not a dog and we don't know what it's like to be a dog.
Right.
So that's where my work kind of focused on is trying to take a step back and see if we can just figure out positive versus negative emotions in dogs. And one of the ways that we can begin to figure that out, because the science is still very new in this area, is looking at do they choose to be somewhere or do they not choose to be somewhere? So, like, you see a vacuum, they see a vacuum. Are they choosing to go near it? Then that means it might actually be, even if you think vacuums are negative, they might actually think it's something positive because they're choosing to go near it.
Hmm.
And again, vacuum, we can use the same example if they're backing away from it when you take out your vacuum. We can assume that there's some sort of negative emotion.
Right.
So it's not a lot of people sometimes get a little frustrated with when I explain this because they say, "I know my dog is happy, I can see it." And I think it's easy for all of us to see happiness, sadness in our pets. But from a scientific perspective, it's really important that we kind of take a step back and just look at purely positive and negative emotional states, and then we can come up with brand new dog emotions.
Hmm. So, do you think that humans often misinterpret signs of canine happiness?
Yes,
We do.
absolutely.
Okay, so to me, I mean, when I had Max, he always seemed happy when he was eating. I knew he was happy when he wagged his tail,
Hmm.
or if he grabbed his ball and would go run around and drop it at my feet. I mean,
Yeah.
those would be signs of happiness, would they not be? Or was I misinterpreting that?
Yeah. So the other thing is, it's important to recognize that dogs are all individuals. So you probably learned your dog's own individual cues over time by like strengthening that bond. But what might be happiness for your dog, Max, for example, might not be happiness for another dog that you don't know. And I think that's the key part too, is like us as owners and pet parents, we can learn and understand our dog's cues, but it doesn't mean we know all dogs. Like a big thing is tail wagging.
Yeah.
So there's no science to say that tail wagging equals happiness. Every time it's
Now, how
tried
do
to
you
been
know? How do
Yes, so tail wagging can also be in situations where dogs are threatened or scared or anxious. So they've put dogs in different situations and sometimes their tail does wag. So we know that tail wagging doesn't always mean happiness. What we think it means is some sort of heightened state or like arousal state. So the dog is heightened in some way. So it's like moving its body and it's moving its tail. Now, some dogs, it might mean happiness. Some dogs, it might mean scared or anxiety. Yeah. So that's a big thing is the tail wagging does not always mean happiness.
That's interesting because and I think most people always think, oh, a dog's happy because his tail is wagging.
Yeah.
He's a happy dog, but that's not necessarily true.
It's not necessarily true. Yeah.
Okay, so how can dog owners create more opportunities for joy in their dogs' lives? If we thought that dog wagging was making them happy, maybe it's not so. How can we, with your through your research and studies, are there ways that we can create joy in their lives?
Yeah. So, one thing I always like to say is you can kind of be your own little animal behaviorist at home with your own dog. So, maybe either take out your notes app on your phone or have your own like pen and paper and just start taking notes about, okay, when I take out the vacuum, for example, my dog does this. When I bring out this toy, my dog does this. But when I bring out this toy, my dog does this. And really start to pay attention to like actually what your dog is doing. Because a lot of times we just assume treat equals happy, toy equals happy. We're
Yes.
not actually looking at maybe the ears are going back in a certain way. Maybe he sits down in a certain way. Maybe her tail wags like more to the left. And so really start to be your own animal behaviorist at home. And then you can really start to pick up on what your dog actually likes. And when you start to figure out what your dog actually likes, then you can start to introduce that more and bring more joy into their life.
In your opinion, how does recognizing and honoring a dog's emotions strengthen the human canine bond?
Yeah. So I think once we are able to kind of take off those blinders of, I know dog happiness equals, XYZ. And begin to recognize our own dog's individual cues, we can also not only try to bring more joy into their life, but also recognize when they're actually not doing so well and try to help them in that way too. Because dogs, we know, are so good at reading our emotions. There's so many studies that dogs are just so in tune to how we're feeling because they really pay attention to us. They look at our entire body, they notice tiniest movements. But we know from science tells us that when humans look at dogs, we only look at their face. So we're actually not really looking at them,
Right.
their whole body. So really just being able to kind of take a step forward and figure out your own dog's cues, I think is the biggest thing.
And how might your research influence the way shelters, rescues, or training programs approach dog care and enrichment?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I would love for shelters, as we know, so many are understaffed and underfunded,
Mhm.
which is very sad. And so a lot of times the amazing workers and caretakers that shelters do have are stretched for time. They have to quickly run through, okay, this dog looks good, this dog looks good, this dog, they have to quickly go through. And a lot of times those biases of like, okay, tail wagging equals happy, that dog must be good, can probably get in the way when they're so like stretched for time. So just even the first step is like recognizing that we might not always be good at understanding dog emotions and taking an extra second or two. Again, writing down, Lucy over here does this when I give her a ball, but Max over here doesn't. And just really start to pay attention to individual dogs' cues as opposed to just seeing dogs as a whole.
Right. It must be tough for people that work in the shelters. As you mentioned, they're overcrowded and they're understaffed, and you've got all these dogs in one spot. I can't even imagine what goes through a dog's head
Yeah.
or what they're feeling being in a spot like.
Yeah. Yeah, oh my gosh, shelter. Yeah, my lab, the Canine Science Collaboratory at Arizona State University, they focus a lot on shelter welfare and trying to better shelter welfare and also create better welfare plans so that it's also easier for staff. Because
Right.
that's a big thing is like these amazing caretakers just want to give dogs a better life, but sometimes they just don't have the resources or the understanding of how to do that.
Right. So for them to do that, do they actually go to a shelter and work with the dogs there?
Yeah, so one of my lab mates, Rachel Gilchrist, she graduated 2 years ago. One of her projects was investigating animal behavior in the shelter, and I actually helped her out on a project. And we would go into the shelter, and she set cameras up on all the above all the dogs' cages, and we were looking at the effect of giving them treats. And it was a lot of fun. It was so sad because I wanted to like take home all
You
of the
wanna
dogs,
take them
of
all
course.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has your work changed the way you personally connect with dogs or, in your instance, your
Yeah.
cat in your own life?
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. So most of my friends and family know what I do for work, and then I will come, I'll say like, "Oh, look how happy that dog looks," or "Oh, my cat is so excited to see me." And most people are like, "Oh, are you sure about that?" Because that's what I'm used to like saying to
Right.
them. So I think it's definitely um I think on one hand it's only strengthened my bond with my cat, but also like any other pets, knowing that like kind of being humble, like, all right, I really don't know everything. But the other thing I like to say is that when it comes to our own pets, it's okay if like we're wrong sometimes. It's okay if I like say my cat's very excited to see me when really she just wants a treat. Cause I know like I'm giving her the best life possible. And like you might misinterpret a dog's cues, your own dog's like tail wagging every once in a while. That's okay. Cause at the end of the day, like you're giving the dog the best life. But when it comes to science, that's my biggest thing. When it comes to science and we're making welfare plans or judgment based on what we think is dog happiness or sadness, that's when it can really have negative impacts. But overall, for my life, I think it's just become like a running joke with my family and friends that whenever I say something, they always come back at me. You're like, no, you said I can't say that. And then,
I'm wondering if, like, where does your work take you? At the end of the day, where is this research gonna go, or how is it going to help people like myself or others who have pets?
yeah. So, I can answer that two ways. So one for myself wants my next step, I guess I can say, is to start my own animal welfare consulting company. So to help zoos, shelters better help their animals. So I can come in with resources, tips, trainings, research projects to help them better understand their animals. The research itself, I hope that so a lot of my research was just preliminary first steps, right? I did it with my dad and my dog. So that's like an N
Right.
of one. I only use one dog. And I
Right.
would love for other scientists and researchers to pick up this research and continue it and say, okay, Molinaro and Wynn, that was, my last name, my advisor's last name, they used a dog that was a larger beagle boxer mix. What if I use a pit bull? Like, do you think people maybe will perceive emotions differently in a pit bull? Because there's a lot of negative stereotypes about that. And I
Right.
would just love to see this work get taken and other scientists pick it up and really kind of understand a wide variety of how we perceive dog emotions.
Right. And so do you think that'll enrich the dog's life or help us understand them better or just make everything nicer for them? I mean, I treated Max really great. I think he had a great life. But could I have done a better job if I had known more about his emotions?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that what I love about science is that we can always learn more. Like we're doing I'm sure all pet parents, especially everyone listening to this podcast, is doing an amazing job at understanding their pets and helping their pets. But we can always do better, right? We can always like learn more, maybe learn key little tips or like just overall broader ways to understand dogs' emotions. Particularly I would love to create own dog specific emotions and come up with like new terms and say like and instead maybe like 50 years from now like not saying oh my dog's happy, my dog's experiencing make up dog emotion word I don't
Right.
and yeah, so I hope that science just keeps, and I say this in general, but like scientists in my field will pick up this line of work to just keep learning more things because the more we know the more we can better their lives.
Right. So we talked about house pets, like obviously dogs and cats would be under the same umbrella. You mentioned zoo animals as well. I would think your research would really help animals that are in captivity, I would
Hmm.
think. I mean, first of all, I don't think they should be in zoos in the first place. I mean, I think animals should all be free.
Hmm.
So that's just my own feeling.
Yeah.
But I'm sure your research helps these animals have a better life. Does it
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. And the same exact thing when keepers are doing a welfare check. Now, a lot of we don't know as much about behaviors like there's not, I guess I should say, there's not as much stereotypes about like tail wagging equals happiness in
Right.
like a cheetah, for example, or
Right.
something like that. But again, like these zookeepers know so much about these animals that they care for. And so again, like doing a quick welfare check, maybe instead of, oh, the cheetah has some enrichment toy, must be happy, and like, let me keep going, actually taking a second or two to recognize maybe I actually don't know how this cheetah is feeling. Or actually, I don't know how this elephant's feeling. And again, try to pay more attention to individual cues. Because just like all dogs are individuals, all elephants are individuals, all cheetahs are individuals,
Right.
all alligators are individuals. And so, same thing, I think the same premise of being a little bit more humble in understanding, thinking we know what our animals are feeling. It can be applied to all animals in captivity, from shelters to zoos and sanctuaries.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, these animals that are in captivity, and I'll go back to the dogs in shelters and the cats in shelters as well. I mean, I think that's an awful way for them to live, and I'm sure they don't enjoy it, but you'd want them to at least somehow make it more enjoyable for them while they're in the
Yeah.
shelter, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, shelters, like their number one goal is to get those pets out, right? To get
Right.
them adopted. And I mean, if someone had billions of dollars to reinvent the entire shelter system, I'm sure someone would to make that a much better life for them. But for what they have now, you kind of have to meet, especially shelters like where they're at. Like they don't have billions of dollars, unfortunately. So let's like work on little things that they can do to help improve the dogs and cats' lives in the shelter.
Yeah, I think that's real. I think it's really interesting. Are you going to continue doing this? I mean, you're quite young, or is this your future career?
Yeah, so the animal welfare consulting firm is like my next step. And with that, while I help zoos and shelters, I'd also love to help them do research projects too. So maybe I work with the shelter. And while we're trying to create a better welfare system, we can also maybe do a little study on the side and write it up. So My biggest thing though is I love taking science and applying it to help people. So while I think science is incredible and there's so much science where scientists just do a research project, they publish it, and they go on to the next science project and they publish it. I personally find it much more enjoyable for myself to do science and then figure out what the results were and then directly help that animal.
Right. I love how you're so into science and how you incorporate science into everything that you do. It must make a huge difference, does it not, when you take the
Thank
science
you.
aspect?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so easy to feel like back to like under thinking we know what our dogs are feeling. It's so easy to think we know. And I do it all the time. Like my cat comes running up to me, like you just instantly get like a sense of like, oh, they love me so much.
Yes.
And so it's of course, and the same with the dogs. And that's why I think science, if you can take actual data that's non-biased, take yourself out of the equation and just study the dog's behavior, we can get much more in-depth understanding of what they're actually feeling. And then we can apply our biases back onto it.
Right. I think it's fascinating. Is there a case that comes to mind that you've worked on that you wanted to talk about or mention that for some reason that just sticks out in your head?
Yeah, let me think. One thing, so I have a study coming out hopefully soon, also looking at our mood. So
Our
a
mood?
lot of our mood, how it
Okay.
impacts how we
Oh,
perceive
how
dog emotions.
right.
Yes. So when humans, we do know that if you're in a happy mood, you're more likely to see another human in a happy mood. And if you're in a sad mood, you're more likely to see another person in a sad mood. So we know that for humans. So I was really interested if that's the case for dogs. Like if you're in a happy mood, are you more likely to see your dog in a happy mood, even if the dog's like not maybe in a happy
Right.
mood? And so I did this study, hopefully coming out soon. Long story short, we actually found the opposite, that if you're in a happy mood because you saw some like happy dogs, you're actually more likely to see dogs in a sad mood. So you have like a mental image of like what a happy dog looks like. And again, this is like a first preliminary study. So who knows why we're doing this, but like you're subconsciously comparing a happy dog you just saw to a dog now. And so again, this just goes back to there are so many things that are impacting our perception of dog emotions that we're not even consciously aware of. So how we're feeling in the moment is going to impact how we're seeing a dog's emotional state.
Really? So all those times I always thought that dogs feel what their owners are feeling. So my belief was when I was really sad, Max knew that I was sad. So he'd always come and give me an extra cuddle. Or
Mhm.
if I was mad, he sort of would stay away. He
Yeah.
certainly wasn't coming up and cuddling with me on the couch if I was mad about something.
Yeah.
So do they not pick up on our feelings?
No, they are so good at picking up on our
Yeah,
feelings. There's actually so much more studies on that rather than how we perceive dog emotions.
right.
We know that dogs can pick up on even like slightest, like our smell slightly changes, like when we're in different emotions, they can pick up on that. They pick up on the tiniest movements. So like maybe you don't even realize that like 3 steps before you go to get the leash, you always scratch your head, whatever. They can pick up on that. So like you always say like, oh, my dog knows when it's time to like go for it. Treat.
Yeah,
Like, how does he always know? It's because he's actually really paying attention to us in ways that we don't even realize. And so we know that they can pick up very well on our just subtle cues. So it might not be like they know I'm angry or they know I'm sad, but they know that if I do this behavior, I'm less likely to give them a treat. So I'm just going to stay away from them because they're doing XY behavior. And that means like, they might not pet me when I come over.
right.
So I think it's more, I would love if we could say that they can instantly understand when we're sad and try to come and cuddle us. I think the more scientific fact is that they're picking up on subtle cues that we're giving them and responding in cue. But I think that's what's so amazing about dogs is even if like the science behind it is not as fun and adoring, it still makes us feel good when they do it.
Right. What would advice would you give to everybody listening about their pets at home, whether it's a dog or a cat,
Hmm.
about trying to relate or interpret their dog's feelings or how to treat them better?
Yeah. I think number one is just be more humble. So kind of take off those blinders is what I like to say. Cause it's so even like the amount of times I've tell people this study or like my work and they say, okay, well, you don't know I know my dog. And it's like, okay, like, and that's fine. I think everyone absolutely knows their dog the best. I am I am not an expert on everyone's dog. But if we can just be a tiny bit more humble, and we're not always right when it comes to our dog emotion, and that's okay. I think people get scared when I say that, like we're not always right. But that's okay because that means we have so much more room for improvement to connect with them.
I see your cat wants to connect with you right now.
Yes, exactly. She's like, you were talking about me? Yeah.
Yeah, she's there. I
Yeah.
think I always thought dogs and cats were really intuitive, and I really always believe that they just know when we're not feeling ourselves.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think, am I wrong in thinking that?
No, I mean, I think like back to what I was saying, like they pick up on cues that
They do.
we don't even realize that we're doing,
Right.
and respond in tune.
Well, Holly, I think your work is fascinating.
Thank you.
I love how you're taking science and you're putting it to such good work and finding out ways that we can communicate better with our dogs and have a better understanding of how they're feeling. I think that's really
Yeah,
important because I mean, my dog was everything to me. And I think most people who have pets, whether it's a cat or a dog, think the same way. And we only want the best for
absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give people the tools to give them the best life possible.
Right. Well, thank you. It was a fascinating conversation with you, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, Holly, your insights remind us that our dogs are not just companions, they're actually emotional beings with rich inner lives. By truly seeing them, listening to them, and fostering their happiness, we're not only improving their world, we're also enriching our own. Thank you for helping us all take another step toward deeper understanding and more compassionate care for the dogs who love us unconditionally. As I mentioned, this was a very interesting conversation, Holly. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for listening to A Dog's Devotion. Love your dog unconditionally as they love us and cherish every moment with them. Thanks, Holly. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on another unforgettable story from the heart. Because when it comes to love, loyalty, and second chances, no one does it better than our dogs. They find us when we're lost, lift us when we're low, and teach us what true devotion really looks like. Thanks for listening. And remember, in this wild world, we're all just trying to find our way home. Sometimes it takes 4 paws to lead us there. So give your pup an extra cuddle today and cherish your time with him. Give him some extra treats too. I know he'll love him. This podcast is in honor of my best buddy, Max.